You're listening to Inside iOS Dev, show about real-world iOS development. Today with you, your hosts, Alex Bush.
And Andrew Brown.
And a couple of bottles of beer.
Yep.
Yeah, this is this episode it's our anniversary episode. So guys, if you're here for some tech talk, tech topics, new knowledge, ain't gonna have that.
No.
Nope.
This is just a look back on 1 year anniversary, looking back on how it's gone, what we've learned, what it's been like. And I guess if you can get to know us better as personalities, because the episodes are, we'd like to stick straight to get to the juicy stuff, get to the knowledge, so you guys can learn. So, you guys really don't get to know us much. So, yeah, like Alex said, if you're here to learn some iOS API or learn some clean architecture,
Nope.
Nah. No, well, we might talk about some of the stuff. But I think this episode, we're just going to look back on, come and reminisce.
Yeah, it's mostly the stuff we don't have. The sport talks about sports.
Yeah, the sports section talk.
What we've done last week.
Well, so, yeah,
stuff like
let's
that.
explain that. So this podcast started, for several reasons, but one large reason was we were unhappy with the podcast, iOS development podcast selection out there, because I remember me and you talked, and I remember listening to one podcast, iOS podcast, that is like...
It was prominent.
Yeah, it wasn't like super famous, but it had a name.
Yeah.
Some people might recognize it. I remember listening. The title was, I don't know, let's say the title was like Learning Auto Layout. 30-minute episode. I remember listening to it, and like 15 minutes into it, they had not talked about it. And they also didn't talk about iOS stuff. They literally just talked about like how their week was going and like
what they've done at work and who had what ping pong table game or whatnot. That like, oh man.
And yeah, and so we've also both had interest in creating content. I mean, I've always had interest in creating video or audio or just any sort of creative content. And I guess we had a conversation and it just kicked off, and we're like, well, let's just make a podcast where we get straight to the point on topics and deliver information to people where they can learn from us. And that's kind of generally how it started. That was like what we were aiming for. So,
yeah, pretty much. And we gave it a shot. It was a very bootstrap setup at our company, right?
Vanilla.
At Vanilla, yeah, where we worked there at the time together.
So we went into an empty office room. We went in there and we were just like, let's just do this, because I know you in particular, you just like to dive into
Oh
things.
yeah, you just
I think
throw puppy in the water.
I'm more of the perfectionist.
See if the puppy gets out.
And so we had nothing really prepared, and we flipped over a trash can and put the office like what is it, like the conference speaker or whatever, so it's like not for podcasting at all.
Right.
That's why if you listen to the very beginning episodes, it's like we sound like we're really far in the distance, or like it just sounds like we're, I don't know, just not good audio quality.
Oh yeah, because we use those speakers we had some people working remotely, right? And they would just get on stand-ups.
Yeah.
They'll get on that screen and that speaker would be closer to the whole team.
So like, which is good for that kind of thing, like conference calls, because it's an omnidirectional speaker. But like when you're doing a podcast, it sounds terrible because you can hear, if you listen to the first podcast, you like hear people like talking in the background and like going through like closing and opening doors and stuff. And that's like when we very first started. We also actually uploaded a few of them to YouTube, and you can see the office we were in.
Yeah, with all the toys and everything.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was, that was our humble beginning. We're kind of came a long way from that.
Still got a ways to go.
Well, still got a ways to go. I mean, now we got the gear. Like, we sound better.
Right. I hope.
I hope.
No, we do sound better. But we were actually just talking about upgrading our gear because we've been doing this for a year.
Right.
Because we're both the same. Where like we don't want to be the gear guy. Like, the gear guy is like, I'm gonna take up surfing, and then buys like the most expensive surfboard, and has like the expensive jumpsuit, and then they or whatever. I don't know what they wear. Jumpsuit. I've never surfed. Whatever they wear, the surf suit, and then they surf for like a month.
And then they
stop, and then but they'll keep the surfboard on the top of their car, so they have the image, at least. I don't want to be the surfboard guy or the gear guy, and I feel like we're similar that way. So we've slowly upgraded our gear as we've seen, like, oh, we've done this, so I think we're due for some better gear.
Yeah, and we keep talking about doing videos. That's something. Yeah. We're still figuring it out. It would be great, but then I don't know. We need to figure out a format for that. Essentially, yeah, I guess the space mostly, because we can be recording them on some toys or something like we've done in the beginning, right?
Right.
And it's also more challenging, I feel like, to me at least. You can't look half dead, and sometimes we are, like, we do it after work, right? It's like you don't see us, maybe in the voice it doesn't really
no, this is the thing. So yeah, because in the beginning, like I said, we uploaded them to YouTube. We would record them on video, and of course video also has audio, so I would edit them to also the video, and then also export it for audio, and then do the podcast as well. So we would do both on YouTube and in podcast form. And on video, if you watched it, you would see us like, or maybe it's like one of those things where that you messed up or something, so you judge it more. But you would see like us like stumble and like not know what to say or something, and just be unsure. But on audio, it hides it.
Yeah.
So it's easier, which is nice. And also, we edit these. So.
Yeah. FYI, guys, I'm sorry to disappoint you. Yeah, we don't edit heavily.
No, we did in the beginning.
Oh, actually, yes.
In the beginning, we edited heavily. It took.
I guess we sucked, right? Like we would just meander or something.
Yeah, we didn't know. We were just getting started. I still feel like we're learning, but it was pretty bad in the beginning.
Yeah, but yeah, these days it's like what. Like for a 15-minute recording, we will like record 18, 20 maybe, right?
No. Maybe like less. It's like let's say it comes out 20-minute episode. I would say we edit out 2 minutes.
Okay.
Yeah. But in the beginning, if it was a 20-minute episode, we would edit out like 5, maybe even 10 minutes, like whole swaths of conversations.
Wow.
Yeah. So it's gotten way better, which is good.
So Andrew, what have you learned through this whole, it's been a year, right? Through this whole process of, I guess, coming up with topics, putting together an outline, right? That's our process. We like come up with topics. We have a running backlog in Trello. Then we pick a topic when we get together and we put an outline.
Right.
And then we just hit record, right, and go sort of through like a bullet list.
Yeah, we don't read from...
But we don't read.
Yeah, we don't read. We basically create a bullet list, like you said, and it's just, here are some of the points that we want to hit, and then it'll remind us. That way there's... Basically, it just gives a structure, really. Yeah. Because we don't want to bounce around randomly. But, yeah.
So what'd you learn from that? Like, from this whole process and doing that for quite so long, actually.
I learned that it's actually really fun. One, I really enjoy it. Another thing is I learn a lot. So what happens is when you're speaking publicly or when you're publicly sharing things, you want to make sure you're correct and not wrong.
Yep.
So you double check yourself. And then in the process of preparing for these episodes, so then you're learning because you don't want to sound like an idiot.
Oops.
See what happened?
So I just hit the table, right? And I don't know if you guys heard it.
It's still not the greatest setup here. But anyways.
You were saying public speaking.
Yeah. What am I talking about? No, what did I learn?
Oh, yeah. What did you learn?
Yeah. It's fun. I learned how to edit because I'm the one who edits the episodes. which I've enjoyed because I've always wanted to, like I said, work on like creative things like this. And also just learning about building an audience, learning about trying to share things in an interesting, meaningful way that people actually want to listen to. I learned that doing something on your own, right? Not having, your boss doing something because your boss. This is our own thing, right? We're doing this on our own. It's our own creative energy that this comes out of. I feel like I learned a lot. There's so much I've learned from this. It's not just like the narrow side of podcasting, right? There's a lot that goes into it. There's the editing. There's the preparing for the episodes. There's the trying to grow an audience. There's a lot that goes into it.
Yeah, that's interesting. For me, the things I learned were I think the big ones were how to structure your thoughts, and I already knew how to do that, right? I would write blog posts before that, and I think I published my book before we started podcasting, but somehow this specific outlet, somehow it forced me to make everything I say and all the bullet points I want to hit way more concise and way more to the point. It's interesting. Before I've done this, I never thought about that this way, right?
Yeah.
You always kind of say you write a blog post, right? You always have this wiggle room, right? And you can stretch it a little if necessary.
Right.
But here, no, like 15 minutes, 20 minutes, we gotta make it, or we cut it.
Right.
And another thing I learned, which is, I'm still processing that and kind of, thinking about it and the way to phrase it too and formulate that. But essentially, the importance of when you're doing it with someone, well, like in this case with you, Andrew, the importance of connecting and clicking, right? This creative work, it gotta click. You can't just, it's difficult to explain, but you cannot do it with anyone, right? Just a knowledgeable person. Yeah. It's like you need to complement in some ways each other, and that way it flows naturally, if you will.
So like the dynamic thing you just brought up, I want to talk about that. So one thing was the dynamic that we thought was interesting, that part of the reason why I wanted to do this was, so when I started, it was about a year that I was at Wanilo.
Right,
so I
right.
had been working professionally as an iOS developer. I had done internships and I had done projects, but I guess it's like truly like professional iOS developer. I had only been doing it 1 year. So, and you had been doing it at that point
For like 6, 7, something like that.
Something like that. So obviously you had more experience. And then also you've worked on other platforms. You've done like Ruby and Android development, right? So part of it was like, we were like, well, that's maybe part of what we can offer is that I'm coming into here as a newbie and I don't have a lot of assumptions in terms of, the curse of knowledge is what it's called, where you learn things and then you forget what it's like not to know those things. You take it for granted, right? So that was that was a very intentional thing of starting this podcast, was like, well, so there's two ways you can interpret it. Is one, you're inexperienced, so who are you to talk? Which I still feel that way. And then, but the other way is like, well, you're inexperienced, so you have that beginner's mind, and you haven't really taken on that curse of knowledge, so you're able to convey information to people or not take for granted things that people might know, and speak more plainly in ways that they understand. And I feel like that's resonated with people, because we did send out those forums because we wanted to see what exactly people like about what we're doing or don't like, so we can improve. And the feedback we got on a few people were like, oh, we understand, like you just speak clearly, or you just you explain things in a way that
clear,
that
right?
I understand,
Gets the point
basically.
across. Yeah.
But simultaneously, we also get feedback saying, "Oh, you guys talk about advanced topics. Like we'll talk about architecture or design patterns or things like that, right?" So I think the dynamic works out, right? Where we're not afraid to explore these more advanced topics, but at the same time, we can still dumb it down because, well, sometimes I need things dumbed down for me, so it works out. And that was always like, I always felt like that was part of my role. Is like I'm the advocate for the. I play the guy who doesn't know what's going on, basically. Like I play like sometimes I just have to be like not afraid to be like, I don't know what that is. Can you explain that to me? Because when you're a developer, part of being a developer is, I think, there's a pressure to appear smart and appear competent.
Right.
But I want to be an advocate for those people. If I don't understand something, then I'm thinking, well, probably other people don't. So I'm just going to go ahead and say, screw it. I'm just going to take a risk here to look dumb and ask what that means, or ask to break things down. And I think that's why the dynamic works, right?
Yeah, that makes sense. I would also, give yourself a little bit more credit. Yeah. And now I'll try to clarify specifically what and why. Basically, people don't know me, but I have a very, very, very high bar on. How should I put it? Quality of of developers I work with,
right.
if you will, right? And by quality I mean not raw knowledge per se, but
maybe the capacity,
and even I want to say intuition of what's good and what's bad.
Intuition,
right? Yeah. And that's what you got plenty of. That's why I was so blown away when I met you, even though, as you said, at the time you had 1 year of experience coding in general, or professionally specifically, right?
Right, professionally.
But I thought to myself, oh my fucking God, this guy, huh? I wish I was like that when I was starting.
Right.
Because we would pair program, right?
Right.
And I'd be like, man, this guy, yeah, sure, might not have the knowledge, but he got that freaking intuition that I got only 3 years in, maybe, or 4.
Right. Interesting.
And that kind of manifests itself in these recordings too, kind of same way, right? It continues there. We do research and bounce ideas of each other. I mean, you keep saying that, I have less experience or something. I don't feel that. Maybe less knowledge in the sense of you, roughly speaking, read less and seen less code.
Yeah.
But if not that, equal, right? You get what's where I'm going with all of this stuff, right? You get where I'm aiming at.
Yeah, intuition. So,
yeah.
Is a developer made or are they born?
Right. Ooh.
What do you think, Alex? Or somewhere in between, or what?
Probably somewhere in between. I mean, you need to have a certain type of personality, right?
The old nature versus nurture question.
Yeah, right? Oh,
Careful.
Man.
You're going to upset someone no matter which way you answer.
Those tough questions, right?
No, it's it's in between, right? Like some people have natural... I can't dance for shit. I'm a terrible dancer. When I've tried to, and I've taken dance classes because I know it's something I'm terrible at, and I'm that way. Where
weakness, improve it.
Yeah, and so yes, I want to improve the weakness, but also I feel like it's healthy to do things that you're not good at because it humbles you.
Oh, I see.
And I'm just not a good dancer. My body just I look at people and I just I can't do it, right? And so I think if I practice day in and day out for 3 years, would I eventually be a good dancer? Sure. Would I be the greatest dancer ever? I don't think so, right? Because I just don't think it's not something that's in me. So, there's probably something to that with programming. Just, for whatever reason, someone has some intuition in terms of they can, think, they just pick up on intuitions on things, and then they can get better through also, practicing, right? So,
yeah.
But there's just so many different types. I mean, there's you can be a great musician, you can be a great artist, you can be a great physicist, you can be a great teacher, and I just feel like it's a mix, right? You just got to find something that it clicks with you in terms of you just have it clicks with you where you have some ability where you're like, okay, I'm kind of good at this. People tell me I'm good. And then the other thing is, obviously, you want to do it. You got to like it.
Right.
And then, well, I guess that's kind of the main pieces. And then, well, I guess the last piece is then just practice. Just work at it and get better.
Right. I see that. I agree to a degree. At the same time, a thought I've been having lately more and more, there's also a question of reading about stuff and, wanting to read about stuff and educate yourself. That's a huge one. And to me, that's the most detrimental for a dev. If you don't want to learn from the best, and specifically, in my opinion, from the books, because those are the pieces of knowledge work, right? That body of work that people put effort in. There's something to them, right? When an article would not do the same thing to you.
A blog post is not going to do the same. Oh yeah, I 100% agree.
Yeah.
Oh, so actually, you know what? One thing that I think gave me a big advantage is I'm willing to read.
Exactly, and that was one of those things.
So
it's like, damn, that guy, he does the right thing.
So this is one thing that I've honestly, I see people who I think honestly, I'm like, these people are more naturally intelligent. Now, I don't know if that's just me being insecure. Maybe it is, but I see people who are like, I'm like, this person's very naturally intelligent, but they don't put in the work in terms of reading the books or like doing the podcast or whatever the extra credit is. And so I feel like, man, I'm just a voracious learner in general. I love challenging myself intellectually. And so with programming, it's great because you can basically never run out of things to do, right? You can't know everything there is to know about in programming. It's pretty much impossible. So I feel like that's one thing that gave me a big advantage is I would, especially at Wanilo, people would be like, oh, read this book. We really like it. Like Sandy Metz, the Pooter book, one of my favorite books, Principles of Object-Oriented Design in Ruby by Sandy Metz. Such a great book. I find myself when I'm writing code or when I'm explaining code to someone or whatever, I'm basically plagiarizing her thoughts.
Right, yeah.
To the point where like sometimes I'm like, is this an original thought of my own, or am I just basically it's an amalgamation of the plagiarization of like all the authors that I've read from?
Exactly.
And to be honest, I really feel like I haven't read that many books. Like what? So what? Clean Code, Clean Architecture, Pooter, Art of Unit Testing,
Refactoring, Martin Fowler.
Yeah, Refactoring, Domain-Driven Design. Although I only read about half of it because I felt like I wasn't ready for it, and like a lot of blog posts, a lot of YouTube videos. So maybe it is, but yeah,
but still, right?
Those things I feel like gave me huge advantages, and sometimes I feel like. Sometimes I get from people, actually I do hear like what you said where I don't have that much experience, but I don't give myself credit, where people say like, oh, you actually know a lot. Yeah. And I just am like, I just read the books.
I know, right? Like it's just out there.
It's there. Like the difference is there's no difference between me and you other than I just decided to read the book.
Precisely. I was about to say that like all of that, like any kind of other shortcomings that you might have, such as like what you said, intelligence. Maybe someone's more intelligent than you and I, but God damn it, you can, you can supplement with reading and basically surpass even them, right? It's like, damn, why wouldn't you do that?
Right.
And that's what frustrates me a lot, actually. In my experience, developers I meet very rarely read a lot about their freaking profession.
It's odd because I found that I've been a little surprised on how little people read and like concepts that I take for granted. For example, like Solid,
right,
from Uncle Bob, which is like very pretty well known. Like some people haven't even heard of it, and they've been programming for a few years, or they might have heard of it in passing, but they couldn't like really explain it to you. Things like that, where I'm like, oh, that seems pretty basic, at least in my mind. And if you learn those things, they give you big advantage in terms of knowledge. So
yeah,
it's interesting. Because in general, I think programmers are pretty smart people because it's basically the job is, it's
Figuring things
cognitively.
out. Yeah,
Your work is done through cognitive work, essentially. Like you're using your brain to create these things, right? It's not like a manual labor job. You're using your brain. And it's interesting. I would think that there would be reading more. Maybe I'm being too pessimistic, but I found that I've been surprised at points where I'm like, oh, these people haven't heard this concept or read this well-known book or whatever.
Yeah, and it's I don't know how about you, but in my experience, it's getting to the point. It kind of feeds back into the podcast, but it's getting to the point where it's so hard to work with some people, right? You have to explain so much sometimes, right? Those things, those concepts that are out there, and you would sort of assume people would read.
Right.
Yeah. Sometimes I even refer to our episodes, like the Singleton episode. I mean, I can't keep explaining this, right? And that's why we've sort of done this episode, right? So it's right there, concise, and we can refer to it.
It's honestly, partly the podcast is selfish because I honestly sometimes listen back to an episode. I'm like, oh, I want to refresh this knowledge,
right,
or I forgot this thing. It's useful. Yeah.
So yeah, what else? What else is there? Sports.
Sports. We both don't like sports.
I don't like sports. Ugh.
Works out. Man, I feel like there's so much. Why are we blinking?
I don't know. By the way, guys, this is the shit we cut out.
Yeah.
You
let's do this unedited.
Yeah, you don't hear that.
Because I want them to hear all the
I
banging
know,
on
right?
the table and burping or whatever we're doing, awkward pauses.
Check 1 2.
All
Right, guys. So we had to. It wasn't editing per se, but we stopped. There was weird music happening.
It was electrical interference, and some pop music was getting picked up on the. Anyways.
Yeah. So Andrew got a new apartment, right? And we're kind of getting used to that stuff. We're recording here. I don't know. Whatever that was.
So what do you want to say?
Oh yeah, I was gonna say I'm gonna be giving a talk soon. In 2 weeks from the day we record.
Right.
And it's going to be in Boston, Swift Fest. I'm going to be talking about iOS interviews.
Wow.
How to prep for them. So yeah, guys. I mean, it's a bit too late to announce, I guess.
Yeah, it's too late.
But
by the time this episode goes out, it's going to be 2 weeks past.
Yeah. But I believe they're going to record that. I think, hopefully. Maybe it's
typically they do.
Gonna
I feel
be on
these
YouTube.
days, all these conferences have been recording it. Or you can get Alex's book, iOS Interview Guide, at iosinterviewguide.com.
Oh yeah,
$500, $600. Is that how much?
No, guys, it's way cheaper than that.
Wait. You're telling me I can read a book that will help me get a job, potentially get $30,000, $50,000 pay raise, and it's how much is it?
It's $39, guys.
$39.
You know.
What?
Just
Dude,
consider the value.
You need to charge more.
Well, I'm
need to
being
charge more.
humble and all.
You need to, don't cut yourself short, man.
Oh yeah, right.
I was thinking 500 conservatively. Wow.
No, guys, I'm that generous. You would think I would not be that soft, but
we're squeezing in an advertisement.
Of course. But yeah, I mean, sort of. I guess that's what I'm gonna be talking about in the at the conference. But yeah, you can also get the book.
Yeah.
Wait. Oh, yeah, we wanted to do something. We wanted to go through listeners' questions.
Yeah.
Let's see what we have.
People want us to start doing listener questions.
Yes, that was...
We got to do a Q&A episode.
One of the feedbacks, and yeah, I would love to. Guys, email us.
Everyone likes the guest episodes more, by the way. They don't just like hearing us talk. How dare they?
I know, right? It's hurting my feelings.
The dynamic duo. How are we not enough?
God, well, guys. Oh, well. We'll deal with that. But no, yeah. We need to think it through. Maybe like have a form, similar thing.
Yeah, just
For-
ask, just submit a form.
with
Just say, what do you want to know?
Yeah. But let's see. What do we have so far?
Top feedback on the form, by the way, was we asked, we were trying to find out some of the topics. Seems this audience is very interested. Almost every single person says the topic they're interested in is application architecture,
Yes.
followed by design pattern second, followed by like a few like iOS APIs and programming languages.
And I'm
third.
so glad that that's the order because those are the two topics
you
we
know,
love.
it works out. Because
Yeah.
that's exactly. So yeah, our audience clearly, they're very smart people. Clearly,
Yeah, of
they
course.
know the good topics.
Yeah, that's where they come, right? Smart people. Oh boy, wait! I can't find anything. What is it? Guests are interesting. First episode. Keep doing the good work. No. Oh yeah, well, someone's asking to make it more interactive.
So here you go.
Two or three questions. So yeah, guys, we're gonna
Yeah.
make it more interactive.
Tweet us
Yeah.
at Inside iOS Dev. Message us if you don't want to tweet.
Transcript. Ooh, that's something we've been
Oh yeah,
putting off.
costs money. Donate to us. We get no. We
don't get paid, guys.
don't get paid.
Just nothing.
We've done no advertising. Well, other than like your book, but
Right,
I mean,
yeah,
not
yeah.
like formal advertising with like a
Yeah, our guests with books, we don't get anything
No,
from them.
they don't
They're
pay
just
us
our
anything.
guests. We
We're
have
glad
a
to have them.
conversation.
It's great
yeah.
to talk to these people. It's great to have a conversation.
But yeah,
But no
other than
money.
that, no
Donate. We got that donate button on InsideIOSDev.com, right? You set it up?
money. Oh yeah, we do.
Yeah. I don't think we've received a single dollar.
I think someone tried to pay us once.
Really?
And it didn't go through.
Oh,
Like something happened there with Stripe, and
Jesus.
I know. Sad. But
Well, we need to set something up. We don't really ask for money either, so
Yeah.
people probably don't know because the button is like on the website, and everyone probably just opens this in some podcast app.
but guys, we wouldn't mind.
No, it'd be nice. It would be
Right.
great to just cover the. It'd be great if I could stop editing these.
That right? Yeah.
And just have someone properly edit them, and then also properly do a
Good
transcript
transcript. Yeah.
to pay for that because that takes time.
Because I actually tried at some point. I got this IBM or Microsoft thing that does the
Transcript.
feed it audio and does the
Yeah.
transcript automatically. It was so bad.
Yeah.
It's like so bad. Rather not have it.
Right. Okay. It's that bad. Wow.
Yeah. Well, I know I have an accent and everything, but I mean, I was actually butchering your words more.
Oh, was it?
Yeah.
Oh, that's interesting. I feel like I speak fairly clearly, but I guess not.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, we actually don't have any questions as far as I can see here.
No one's interested.
Yeah, they're like people, suggesting things, but not questions. Yeah.
What else did we learn from the feedback? People like the guest episodes. They want to talk architecture, design patterns. I think some of the feedback we got was like, oh, we like the more advanced topics that we touch on.
Yes.
Which is something we wanted to target. We wanted to target like mid-level developers to more senior developers because there's plenty of beginner.
Yeah. Too
Here's your
much in my
table view.
opinion. Yeah.
This is called a table view. You get your data source. We didn't want to be another one of those.
Mm-mm.
They're at the bottom.
Yeah.
Keep scrolling. Nothing. No love. No questions. I feel
Well,
like we had some-
there's love, but no questions.
Oh, there's love. Thank you for the love.
Yeah.
I
Thanks,
wasn't
guys.
expecting that much love, to be
Actually,
honest.
yeah, honestly, yeah, I was very flattered. It's
Yeah.
like, man.
Oh, yeah. No, by the way, sorry, I cut you off.
Yeah, go ahead.
But by the way, thanks for the love. It helps seriously when people email us and they're like, "Oh, you helped me so much." Blah blah blah. It really.
Oh yeah, right.
It's
And
super-
guys, speaking of it, thank you for reminding. We do read all of them.
Yeah.
Like we do actually. Like I sometimes don't have time to respond.
Yeah.
Unfortunately,
Yeah.
like, and especially the big ones. Not in a sense that I don't like the very,
The messages they sent.
thorough messages, if you will, right? Like the big messages. I appreciate it. I love it. It's just I want to respond to like a lot of things there, like touch every point back, and it freaking takes time, and I don't always have it.
Yeah.
But we'll get to it eventually.
Yeah.
So yeah, just know we read them all.
Yeah. Yeah. Thanks. It's helps a lot. Keeps us going. It's good to know people actually enjoy this and that we are helping them or helping y'all.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, no questions. I checked.
Wow.
Okay.
So Alex, I'll just interview you. So
right,
Alex,
go for it.
Where do you see this podcast a year from now?
Ooh, that's a great question. I would like to see it with video format too, right? So I guess it's still a podcast. People call it podcast, but with what is that? Something's banging on something.
We need a better setup. I would like to have a better recording environment where we don't have random radio pop songs playing and banging noises and like phones buzzing.
Okay, the phones we can do something about now, but yes.
Okay, sorry, go ahead. So YouTube video, I think.
Yeah,
you said.
like I would like to see video.
Yeah, we both want to make video content.
And that may be not at the podcast thing specifically, but I wanna do screencasts. And you and I have been talking about it actually, and we actually have done something like a little insight for you guys. We started a screencast series, but
about architecture,
but then
about app architecture.
Yeah, but then life happened.
Yeah, that thing called life,
and we couldn't finish it. Never even gotten to this state of being releasable. I mean, it could have, but no. We need to rethink that because I really want to.
You want to do that?
I really want to do that because I feel like there is a need, there is a void, there's a need for that.
Oh yeah,
in the iOS community. I mean, I know CIO guys.
They came out with the book.
They just came out with
which was great. I feel like that was a long, time coming.
Oh wow,
yes. Dude, So here, like, hold on.
Yeah, go
app
ahead.
architecture is my thing, and I think that's why me and you get along in terms of why we clicked at work and started getting along because we both like talking architecture and design patterns.
Mm-hmm.
Even like coming in, like I said, I was only at Wanilo. It was my first year working professionally as an iOS developer. Coming in, I was like, why is everything like? I just knew things were wrong.
Don't hold back. Tell us.
Yeah, I'm slightly holding back. I want to curse, but no. But like you said, like the intuition thing you were saying earlier, like my intuition was like, why is this like so difficult? And why are there like these things called view controllers that are 3,000 lines long and they do everything and they're like so hard to work with? Like I was just so frustrated. And like I was like 6 months into working at Wanilo, I was like, what's wrong? Like, why are things like this?
Yeah.
I can only imagine like being an iOS developer like you have all this time suffering.
I was
through that.
I was
like just yeah. And so this is like then we started experimenting with the view model thing you introduced because you I think done a little bit of work with it in the past. We started using it and I was like, wow, this is amazing. This is so much better. It's easier to work with. Like my mind was like basically like you like MVC, at least Apple MVC. I'd like to clarify Apple's interpretation of MVC, which is not actually original MVC. So just to be clear, we did the view model thing and it was so much easier to work with. And I'm like, yes, this is like, basically at that point I was like, I don't think I'll ever write an Apple MVC app unless they're like little toy projects or like I'm the only one working on it. It doesn't matter, like, because they're small. But the short of it is that the view controller is the view layer, basically.
Yeah. It's
But my frustration is it took like so long. Like, I feel like I'm coming. Maybe I'm missing some perspective and some history because I'm coming into the scene late. But also, I felt like, why am I coming onto the scene like all these years later with not that much
it's still
experience?
not fixed, right?
And it's not fixed, and no one's talking about it.
Right? It's like, God
It's
damn
like
it.
so frustrating. And then we did the view model thing, and I'm like, why is no one doing this? And why is no one talking about this more? Why is this not more standard? So from there, I was like, I don't think I'm ever going to do Apple MVC. And I was like, we just do MVVM as the default.
It wasn't a MVVM by the book.
No,
either.
it was kind of our own interpretation.
Yeah.
But it was still so much better.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I will say this. Let's talk MVC, Apple MVC.
Sure.
I did a lot of research on this topic.
Oh, you did, man.
Okay, let's get into
That
this.
guy likes to read. Okay, like I say, I like to. No, this guy likes to read.
Okay, yeah. Now we built it up, and I'm like as if I know what I'm talking about, and I'm probably going to completely butcher this, but whatever. So here's what happened. MVC, Model View Controller, was started by this guy called Trygve, like Runesgaug or something like that. Starts with an R. Trygve. He started MVC. He wanted a way to abstract the user interacting with the view and the underlying model that was behind it, right? That represented. So there's the underlying model, and then the view is kind of the graphical representation of that. So he wanted to abstract that such that the user is just interacting with this view layer or this view object thing, and then behind the scenes you have the separation of concerns such that you can get code reuse, and you just don't let's for example, you don't have view logic in your model, or they're just not mixed up, right? Again, I probably butchered that, but so that's what happened. And so in his original interpretation of it, the model and the view layer directly communicated. Now, so what happens in iOS, Apple's MVC, it's not really the traditional MVC. What happens is basically it's like this model view adapter where the view controller, which is supposed to be the controller of MVC, is really this intermediary between the model and the view, and things just pass through the controller, aka the view controller. So one, they already deviated, but it's fine. Everyone has their own interpretations, but that was one thing that happened. So we're already getting off on shaky grounds because you're using a name of a concept that has already been defined and you're changing it. Right. But okay, one mistake, that's fine. It's a naming thing. Sometimes I think people use the wrong name, and I'm like, screw it, I'm going to name it this because they shouldn't have named it that. They took the concept of that name. Well, view models, for example, we can get to that later in terms of MVVM. So that was one thing. The other thing is view controllers. So I was reading the Martin Fowler's refactoring books. I don't know, some Martin Fowler book, whatever. He was saying in there how I think it was the Smalltalk, like GUI guys, basically, they realized that the view and the controller were often tightly coupled. So what they just did was they just would just combine them. Hey, what does that sound like? Oh, a view controller? Huh? Is that?
Oh, wow.
Interesting. Okay, so I thought we had the separation of model, view, and controller, so code reuse, separation of concerns, but okay, they're going to put them to,
two responsibilities in one thing. But...
I'm sure at the time they had the reasoning to do that. Like they were like, hey, these things are so tightly coupled, and it makes sense to put them together.
Right.
They're so again, there's another little mistake. Something went wrong, but that one little mistake, that one little tweak by itself, probably wasn't enough to make the big problems. So another thing is part of this is that a model view controller was it's a GUI architecture, meaning it's not like a whole app architecture.
Right.
The model of the MVC is like huge. right? You're like, so if you look at something like Viper, or like Riblets, like you'll have at Uber, that I feel like is a whole app architecture because it's going from end to end. So what happens in model view controllers? A view, I know what a view is. Views are like, they're clear, right? You know what a view is. It's not, okay. Controller, a little harder to define, but it's this intermediary. Now model, so there's domain models. Like, let's say you have a card game, right? And you're like, oh, I have a card and I have a board. Well, I guess card games don't have a board, like a table or like player. Those are domain model concepts.
But but on the other side, there are states of the UI, right?
Right.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead. Yeah, go ahead.
Let me. Yeah, I see where you're going, but so now, but MVC, there's a lot in that M there that you're not talking about, and so. By the way, this is also part of the problem why people stick everything in the controller, because they're like, oh, networking, that's not a model. I'm not going to make like the card game example. A card, you can model a card.
Which is good, by the way. Like in Ruby on Rails, just for the context.
Right.
Like people fucking stick everything in the model. Fat model.
Yeah, the fat model thing.
Different discussion though. Go ahead.
So then what happened was people stuck stuff like, oh, accessing the database, accessing the network. We're going to put that in the controller. Okay, so yet again, alone on itself. Hey, sometimes you gotta cut corners, whatever. Like, I wouldn't call it cut corners, but sometimes you just make decisions. Now, put all these things together. Now, what's happening is the view and controller, they're squeezed together in this thing called a view controller. Okay, so now it's already blown up because view controllers do a lot.
Right.
Now, also, like I was just saying, people aren't sure what to put in the controller because it's not clear. So then now you end up with more stuff in this thing called a view controller. Now it has more responsibilities. And then also now everything communicates to that view controller because again, like I said, everything, it's an intermediary. It passes through. So everything has to pass through it. So everything is passing through this one thing, and it's taking on so much responsibility, and it's massive, massive view controller. So that's kind of high level. Right. I didn't prepare for this episode like we usually do, so it's probably not the best explanation, but that's kind of high level, just with some drinking going on. So that's the thing. Now people will argue, and this is where I would get frustrated. I would read on blogs and people would say, oh, people were just doing MVC wrong. You're not doing MVC right.
Oh boy.
Which partly, but it doesn't help when you're not clear. Like, that's not helpful to mid and beginner developers to be like, oh, you're just doing it wrong, right? Like, give clear prescriptions and like say specifically what it is, but also it still doesn't fix the problem with the view controller being so tightly coupled with the view that it's really a view layer concept. And also it doesn't address also the baggage of the historical baggage that I discussed of what's going on. So yeah. And then also you get people saying like, well, model view controller is just like this philosophy. It's like this broad philosophy. It's just like this loose guideline, which partly I can get behind, but again, that's not helpful. Like, it's just it can be interpreted too widely. And so what happens is you get people, so I feel like there's multiple, but off the top of my head, I can think of, you get beginner kind of people who don't really know where to put things. So of course it goes in the view controller. And then the other part is, if you're moving fast, you just want to like do things quickly. You just also put it in the view controller. The other thing is you have all these code samples, even from Apple themselves, putting everything in the view controller.
That's the worst. I mean, how can such a prominent company encourage that?
Right.
It's like, oh my God, yeah.
So my frustration was that model view controller had these problems that I would read online and see in the projects that I worked on that it was this massive view controller problem was the thing. But then I would go online and I would either see nothing, or I would see people as like apologists saying like, oh, you're doing it wrong, and like just give like these like kind of vague kind of like responses. Like you're not like, it's not helpful. And so I would see people put things down like, oh, a model MVVM, or like model view presenter, or like Viper, like, oh, it's just bike shedding about these topics, and and just stick to MVC. It's like, again, you're not helping. And I think all those architectures, they all have their place. And you know what? Programming evolves, things change. Just like MVC, someone came up with that because they were trying to solve a problem. Well, hey, maybe we need to move on from MVC. And again, I clarify Apple MVC, which is different than traditional or original MVC. And there's nothing wrong with that. What they're trying to do is creatively solve problems because they see these problems exist. And I actually think that's what humans do, right? We adapt, and that's part of the beauty of human intelligence is we see problems and we creatively come up with new solutions. Now, so I think it's good that we're trying all these things. I think that people sometimes are like, oh, I see this Viper thing and I'm just gonna shove it into my app and see how it works. And I think obviously that's like thoughtless and wrong. But hey, at least they're trying to creatively solve a problem, and I bet you they'll learn from that and they'll get better. It's worse. I think that's less worse than these like MVC apologists who like just want to stay in like their MVC land with their 5,000 line view controllers and think that's perfectly fine, or just give some like vague, like it. Yeah. But I feel like lately in the past year, things have been coming like you got Uber coming out with the Riblet thing, which I think is great.
Oh yeah.
You've seen the popularization of Viper. And then you have like OpsCIO guys
giving an
Matt
overview
Gallagher
of
coming out with this app architecture book. It's great. This is great.
That's the right direction.
That's the right direction. There's no one size fits all solution for all your problems.
Right.
There's different things to try and experiment with them. Don't put people down and say, "Oh, you're just bike shedding," or "Oh, you're overcomplicating it," or "Oh, you're not doing it right," and then not giving like actual.
That's what frustrates me the most. The lack of prescription, if you will, the vagueness of the answer, right? It's exactly what you said. The MVC apologists, I actually really like that term. I keep seeing people who would do that, right? Like exactly what you said. They'll say, "Oh no, you're just doing it wrong. You're not sticking to Apple's way of doing MVC or something, and that's why everything breaks apart. You should be doing that." But they never explain how. They never give you the concrete, specific things. And typically, in my experience, that comes from the people who would say something along the lines of, "Oh, there's so many opinions out there, and you can't really the answer is depends." Right? That's the favorite answer they give you. But that frustrates me the most because that does not freaking help anyone.
So I 100% agree. And here's the thing. I think what that is this is an example of the curse of knowledge, where basically people who've been programming in iOS for 5, 6, 7 years, they go, "It depends." And yes, that is actually correct. That is correct.
Yes.
It's not helping people who have a year of experience. It's way too vague. They're lost in the forest and they don't know what to do. And they go look online at example code and they see Apple themselves shoving everything in the view controller. It's just like, I feel like it's just not fair to the newer people out there to say it depends. Yeah, it's correct. It's not helping them though.
Yeah, in my opinion, there is a time and place, and I would even say now actually most of the time there is time and place to be prescriptive. Say exactly what needs to be done, and then people will look at that, take that in, and decide for themselves whether that works or not, or a combination of your prescription and some other prescription might work for them. But or they just take that advice to heart, right, and just do that. But it's way better than the alternative that we have right now.
Yeah, just go along to get along. Keep the
keep the status quo or whatever.
Keep the status quo, basically.
Yeah, and that's sort of in a way what I'm trying to do, right? Like maybe not just with this podcast, but in just general at work specifically, right?
Right.
But with blog posts too, and with this podcast as well. Like I want to tell, even though, of course, that's not the ultimate holy grail of how to do that. Like, duh. I mean, no. But that would help you most likely.
Yeah.
Or you could use it most likely.
Or if it doesn't work out 100%, like if someone uses MVVM and it's not like the perfect fit for their app, it's not like their app's going to like blow up and like everything's going to go to crap. It just might not work that well, but I bet you they will learn and they'll get better on the next iteration.
Right.
Right. Same thing with like, anything else you want to apply.
But if you keep doing MVC, you can keep using that approach.
That's all you know.
Why are you expecting different results if you keep doing the same thing?
Right.
It's like not gonna happen.
I also feel like another thing is that developers want to be, they want to come across as thoughtful, and maybe they are being thoughtful. And so what they want to do is they want to be careful and not be prescriptive and say like, oh, you should do this, right? Because what you're doing then is you're making a claim.
You're avoiding responsibility.
Yeah, you're making a claim, and then you're kind of sidestepping it and being like, and not taking on the responsibility of standing behind the consequences of that claim. So I think part of it is like they don't want to stick their neck out there because there's consequences. Because if they're wrong, it's painful to be told, "Hey, I'm wrong."
Right.
It's not good to. Typically, people want to be right. It feels good to be right. But I think so. What happens is that people hide behind this like sort of being vague and saying, not wanting to be prescriptive and kind of sticking their neck out there and saying like, you know what, I think MVVM would be great for your app because what they could instead do is say, well, it depends. You got to look, see what's out there. And then the person walks away going like, okay,
that didn't help.
I'm not sure what to do. Yeah,
exactly. It's I don't know, that frustrates me a lot.
That is probably one of my bigger frustrations. And actually, I guess we talked about why we wanted to start a podcast. That was probably one of the bigger frustrations also of why I wanted to start the podcast, because I was like, oh, I'll put my neck out there.
Yeah.
I
mean, if I'm proven wrong, like I'll be proven wrong and I'll learn.
We've had the same exact conversation. It's like you put your neck out there, and either you're right, which it's nice to. It feels nice to be right, and like someone sees you as an expert or whatever. That's nice. It's flattering. But if you're wrong, well, people tell you, and then you learn, right? So there's really no losing, right? So and like we've had people actually. Like say stuff or like, mention things and we're like, oh crap. And then I learned, right? And then I wouldn't have known otherwise. So
exactly.
There's really no losing other than losing a little bit of your ego or your pride, which, hey, that you just got to put that to the side because I'd rather pay that get
price.
Better.
Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah.
But kind of getting back to the community and architectures. So this is, I given all of that, right, I like where it's going, but I wish it would go even further in the direction of let's try different architectures. Let's figure it out. Let's mix them up. I don't know, but be more prescriptive and try freaking not MVC, right?
Right.
Oh shit! Now I forgot what I was gonna say.
You want me to jump in for a little bit while you try to remember?
Please do.
I'm talking architecture, so I could just
keep right?
going. Yeah, but MVC is like if you do MVC, that could be the right decision.
Ooh,
there's nothing.
I remember now.
Go ahead.
Thank you for the filler.
Yeah.
So again, I like where it's going. I wish we'll have more of that. But also actually also frustrates me, that's the right choice of words. A lot of these architectures and design patterns that you and I, advocate and even prescribe, right? We didn't just heard about it or we came up with that. We read them in books yet again, right? Back to that.
Actually, that's a great point.
And what frustrates me is a lot of those seemingly quote unquote new things coming out
Oh,
are
great
the
point. I know where
goddamn
you're going.
old things
Yes.
that were in the books
exactly.
already like
Yes.
20 years ago
Yes,
sometimes.
Yes.
And I don't know, specifically the one thank God and not in the iOS community, but man, it freaking kills me. Like Reduxes and Reacts and all of those JavaScript thingies these days.
Oh, here he goes.
Okay, I'm not gonna bash on
the JavaScript
JavaScript in
Every
this episode.
I'm just kidding.
But the Redux thing, right? Like this, that's a reactive architecture of like a global storage reactive architecture that's been already solved and written about
Right.
in many books before. It just had a different name, or rather, it was dispersed into multiple things, as far as I know. And now it's sort of like together and has this name.
Right. And yeah, and also,
But it's not freaking new.
yeah, it's not new. The broad strokes are not new. Maybe the details are different.
Could be.
You know, the details might be different, but like the broad strokes are, there's a global store and things subscribe to it, and then like there's this reactive changes.
Yeah. It's just
Yeah. MVVM is not some new thing in the iOS land. It was created by Microsoft.
exactly.
They've had that for years.
Yeah,
Model View Presenter has been around forever.
For a long time, yeah.
Long time. Viper, I feel like, is new, but the concepts, it's an application of concepts that have, application of the clean architecture principles that Uncle Bob prescribed.
Developed, yeah.
But those come from his years of experience, right? So,
Yeah.
like, none of these are just like someone's just like slapping their keyboard and seeing what happens. Like, so even if you do experiment, quote, you know, or like, you know, they've been
Yeah.
battle tested already. Like,
Yeah. If you
the
just
world's not going to catch on fire if you try them. Just try them and see what happens. You'll learn.
sort of the way I look at it, there are people, there are people out there smarter than me. I don't need to reinvent the wheel.
Yep.
Just read the darn stuff that they wrote and freaking learn from that. Oh, rather, first, use that, because chances are it's actually already proven and good and will help you, or freaking learn from that at least. And that frustrates me a lot, that I don't see people do that in our community.
Right.
Ugh. I mean, I understand those books are not written for, with Objective-C or Swift examples, but for God's sake, be a little bit of a polyglot. It's same abstractions anyway. Right? It's like, just like you were reading that Putter book, which is Ruby, right? Like, doesn't freaking matter.
Dude,
It
that
just
book
doesn't.
is one of the most influential books on my thinking day to day as an object-oriented programmer.
Yeah, guys.
Seriously.
Like, read that one.
And
please.
it's Ruby. It's Ruby. It's not Objective-C or Swift.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah.
So yeah, that's kind of another sidetrack back to the where I see this podcast, right, going. Well, I think about it, I wish we would do more of that. I don't know, maybe bring interesting books up more that we think people should read.
Yeah, we've done that a few times, but definitely we can do that more.
Yeah. Because, yeah.
Another thing, so you were saying about reinventing the wheel and people, coming across things and thinking they're just like these new things. So I felt about protocol-oriented programming in Swift.
Oh my fucking God. Yes.
Okay.
Yes,
this
please.
came out, I was like,
Are you kidding me?
God.
It's like,
And then they have like this branding around it, and there's like all these blog posts, which I guess it's nice, but just like the fact that like everyone's acting like this new thing, it's like, oh, you're just programming to interfaces.
Yeah,
like, that's like
that's been around.
That's like, yeah, and that's like really like well recommended by tons of people. Use immutable, so prefer structs over classes, which basically means use immutable. Objects or data structures, or I guess, yeah. That's not new.
Not new.
That's not new.
That's like functional programming 101.
Yeah.
And by the way, guys, functional programming doesn't mean you don't do OOP or vice versa. You can use both, all of them together, the best shit at the same time.
Right.
Read the Clean Architecture book. Uncle Bob
Oh, that's another great book.
explains it way freaking better.
Right.
Well, obviously. But,
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's another, yeah. It's, but again, like, that was part of my frustration of like starting the podcast. This is another example of like, I would see this like protocol oriented programming and everyone's like acting like
it's a new thing.
Yeah,
and
like-
Apple came up with a
yeah, like
brilliant
Apple invented it. And I'm
No.
like, I'm just sitting here like, this is not.
I know,
what's going on here. So, and yeah, I think the podcast is, we want it to be honest, right? And like be like, sometimes that means like stating uncomfortable opinions, or like maybe asking things that are uncomfortable because, you're not supposed to ask, or stating things. But we're not trying to be rude. I don't want to be
rude. Just
rude.
want to poke a little to get the truth.
Yeah, we're just trying to, find out what the truth is and really learn and have other people learn. So that's why with things like, you see things like protocol-oriented programming, and I'm like, I see all these blogs, and they're all part of like the jumping on the bandwagon, like this is some new thing. And I'm like, why are there no blogs saying like, this is old, this is just a rehash of old stuff, and, calm down. Do it actually, because I think it's good.
Yeah, it's good.
But
like, we're not discouraging
Apple
it.
didn't invent this.
Yeah.
Like, why does no one say that? And I think partially it's because it's uncomfortable maybe to say that.
Maybe it's boring too.
Yeah, maybe it's
you wanna
boring.
be celebrating with everyone else, I guess.
Yeah. So
You don't want to be that old schmuck who says you kids don't know, but and I realize that's how I sound now, and probably both of us, right?
yeah, I sound super old with my 2 years of programming experience, but shit, I was gonna say something and I forgot.
Well, I'll fill in for you now.
Yeah.
I think that's probably partially it, right? Like, you just don't want to be that guy who says, "Oh no, guys, we've seen it all, and you kids don't understand, and you should write in stuff in C. Come on, it was a perfectly good language." Blah 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 blah.
Well, that's a certain kind of old timer. I don't think all old timers are like that, but yeah,
Yeah.
That's the old timer who just like kind of never
Set in their own ways.
yeah,
and stuff.
kind of never. I mean, C is great for certain tasks, right? And Swift's great for certain tasks, or you might use, I don't know, what other language? Smalltalk,
Yes. Kotlin, man, that's the hot shit.
or
man.
Haskell. Like
Haskell.
yeah,
Oh,
I don't know, some
right.
like super, super paradigmatic, one kind of way of thinking. Like Smalltalk is pure object oriented, and then we have Haskell, which is like the pure functional. I think pretty pure functional. Yeah. So.
Yeah. So yeah, guys, that's kind of what we're advocating. Educate yourself, read the books, right? Don't paralyze yourself by like not doing anything before you read them. Of course not. That's another extreme.
Oh, and also don't paralyze yourself after reading them and feeling like there's so much things to know and do and just not do anything.
Right.
Just bite off a little chunk and be like, okay, I'm going to try this one concept. You don't have to read a book and do like read it. For example, I read that Art of Unit Testing book, and then I was like,
right, we got to talk about. We have that in the backlog.
Yeah, we're gonna read that. We're gonna do a podcast on that. But then I was like, I'm gonna do unit tests, and I didn't know 100% how to do it, but I just started it, and now we have how many unit tests at Reddit?
Yeah,
I don't know.
You've been telling me.
We went from
you're
0 to like hundreds, basically.
Spearheading that, huh?
Yeah.
That's good.
So, I'm pretty sure my unit tests are not like perfect, but they're stable and they're working, and they've got a few breaking changes. So that's nice. And the more that are added, the more comfortable I feel changing things, which is nice.
Funny you mentioned that. That's what I'm doing these days at Uber, actually. I'm mostly, even though I kind of work on features still, but now we're like big and focusing on unit testing and quality. Testing. Yeah, and I've been writing more of that. Thank God. Yeah, it's kind of same thing. I found a few bugs that we didn't even know were sitting there, because I would like start to, before I change stuff, I'll write unit tests to like understand how the darn thing works, because some code is that way now there. Like, I don't get what it's supposed to do. So I start poking with unit tests. So, like, what if I give you an empty array? What happens? Like, what would you spit out back?
Right.
And then it blows up with a runtime exception of some array index something.
Mm-hmm.
No one ever gave that thing an empty array before.
Mm.
And, well, that was a potential bug down the road, right?
Right.
But then I wrote a bunch more tests with different data, and I finally figured out what the hell that thing does, and then I refactored. So, it would have been way better if the first tests were first, but...
Right. I'm kind of want to... Sorry, I just had a thought pop up,
Yeah,
and I kind of want to jump back a little bit to what we were talking about poking. Sometimes we like to poke and maybe ask questions that are somewhat uncomfortable.
I hope our guests don't get offended.
No, I don't think so. I hope not, and I don't think so. We let them know ahead of time.
Yeah.
But I feel like we do that with each other. Like you and your JavaScript hate.
Oh boy.
I actually never used JavaScript, so I don't, I don't 100% believe you. And I know that you can be
blessed.
I know that you can get in your...
You're unspoiled. You haven't seen the atrocities of this world.
So, which is why I wanted to invite Julian, which was, I think the name of that was called like JavaScript Battle or something.
Languages Battle.
Yeah, JavaScript Language Battle, something like Programming Language Battle, where Julian came on, who is I wouldn't say he's like a lover of JavaScript, but he's like a supporter of it. And sympathizer. He's a supporter of it. It's not like his language of choice, but he's like, I think it's good for these reasons, and he gave arguments, and I thought that was interesting. And
sure,
you know, it was. I guess it's not that uncomfortable because we're friends and we know Julian. Mm-hmm. But I know y'all personally had uncomfortable conversations. They just weren't on the podcast recorded.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Oh man. But I think we should be able to have uncomfortable conversations and like not be at each other's throats, because the goal is to get better and improve. And if I'm proven wrong, great. I want to be proven wrong so I can learn. And if I'm right, well then suck it. No, if I'm right, then then the other person learns or whatever. We're just learning together. So yeah.
And if you're right, then you get to explain it, and when you explain, you freaking learn more.
When you explain,
clarify for yourself.
You clarify for yourself, because then you're like you find out the shadows of your knowledge.
That's the beauty of teaching, or at least certain kind of teaching, right? Where you don't repeat the same thing again, but sort of teach what you, I want to say, learn recently or something. That way you reinforce that even more, right?
Oh yeah.
So, but yeah. Oh man, JavaScript, don't get... No. I'm
not going to get you started.
No, please don't. I'll need a lot of whiskey.
This episode's already going on long enough. I don't want it to go another hour if I bring up JavaScript more.
Wait, where were we?
I don't know. I feel like we should wrap up. This episode's probably like an hour and a half now.
Good. I mean, we got it all out of our system. Then we have another season.
No. You didn't get out of your system. We didn't talk about JavaScript.
All right, guys. So that's coming.
Yeah,
at some point.
Yeah, when you see a 5-hour episode uploaded, that's when you know the JavaScript episode finally dropped. That Alex finally let it all out.
Beware. Yeah. Beware. You know what? Now I'm thinking we probably need to have another episode like that. Maybe have Julian, right?
Right.
But we also should have our friend Art from a few episodes back.
Right.
Because there was recently some development there where he...
Art, you mean?
Yeah. Where he read clean architecture and he changed his opinion in regards of JavaScript.
Oh, interesting.
And he is... I don't want to put words in his mouth, but as far as I can tell, he now says, no, screw that. TypeScript is better. Because sanity. So I think a more interesting conversation could be get both of them and have 2-on-2 fight. The JavaScript camp and anti-JavaScript camp.
So you'd have
Oh, wait,
Alex is
2 on
like
1?
the most extreme anti-JavaScript, JavaScript anti-crusader, and then you'd have Julian, the pro JavaScript guy, and then we'd have the guy who's vacillated between the two, and
Sort of, yeah.
and then you'd have me as like
The arbiter.
the just like kind of neutral, doesn't really know, just kind of there to poke,
Yeah.
ask questions.
See?
You know,
Sounds interesting.
we'll see what comes out of that.
But yeah,
We should wrap it up.
let's wrap it up.
No one's listening to this at
I
this
know.
point.
We ran out of beer too, so meh.
All right.
All right, guys. It was fun.
If you listen
Hope
to this
it was
whole
fun
thing,
for you.
if
Oh,
you
yeah,
listen to
high
this
five.
whole thing.
High freaking five.
This was mostly for us, just to have just a conversation.
Yep.
But this is a celebration. We had some beers of our 1 year. I don't think it's been exactly 1 year, but it's been around
It's
1 year
about
of
that,
our
yeah.
podcast. So thanks for listening. You
Yeah.
are a super fan. Actually, contact us. Let
Yeah.
us know what you
Yeah,
thought of the episode if you listened to this whole thing.
Email us.
We'll be
We're-
very impressed.
But yeah, and we'll see you next time with the regular program.
Yeah, guys. Feedback, please. It really helps us. We want to get better.
Yep.
All right.
All right. Bye.
Bye.